school. I'm Alex. I am the girl behind BrowTab, the brand, the products, the online education, and this YouTube channel. Today we are going to be talking about brow mapping for microblading appointments specifically, but this information could be used for really any brow appointments, for any other brow PMU service, or brow tinting, brow henna, brow lamination. We are going to talk about the importance of brow mapping, what tools to use, the keys to great brow mapping, and finally I'm going to show you actually how to use the string theory mapping method on a client. Little bonus, I'm going to go over some common mapping mistakes that I've definitely made in the past too, and just little tweaks of how you can fix them to make your mapping that much better. If you're new to this channel, I'm Alex. I am the girl behind BrowTab. I am the owner, the brow artist behind BrowTab, the brand, and this YouTube channel, as well as our online education program. BrowTab specializes in all-in-one nano microblades. These all-in-one microblading tools are our bread and butter because they cut through skin like butter. Trust me, they're sharp AF. But we also have all the basics that you need to create a great microblading service. The pre-inked mapping string, brow pencils, measuring calipers. Did you notice how I said basics? That's because I'm a strong believer in just needing the basics. Simplifying the service and simplifying the tools that you need to microblade. We don't need all those extra gizmos and gadgets. We just need quality basics. So let's get started talking about brow mapping. So why is it so important to be good at brow mapping and get really great mapping outlines for your clients? I've said this before, and I always say I don't know how true it is, but honestly, I think it's really true that mapping is more important, as a more important step of the service than the actual microblading. Mapping is the basis of your appointment, and if you're setting yourself up to not have a good map, a good outline, it doesn't matter how good your microblading skills are or how crisp your strokes are, you're not going to be able to create beautiful brows without the fundamentals of having a good map and a good outline to be an absolute basis of any microblading appointment, or really any brow appointment, is brow mapping. So that's why you're going to spend so much time focusing on building up this skill, and I'm going to spend lots of time today with you explaining to you how to do it. By mapping out our clients' brows, we are able to use our clients' facial structure and natural measurements to create two symmetrical brows. And using the string mapping theory, which is the method I'm going to show you today, it's actually quite simple to create symmetry. I always like to reassure my clients that mapping and the outline that I show them are just guidelines. So just because their facial structure can hold this shape, this style, this type of brows, doesn't mean that this is the style of brow that they want to wear. So mapping is just a guideline. If you have personal preferences within reason that you want to change, we can always change it. So I like to reassure this of my clients. If they feel that the fronts of the brows are coming in too far, we can pull them out a little bit, because in the end, they are the ones who have to wear these brows, so we want them to be comfortable with them. We can make these changes within reason. We don't want to be offering crazy shaped brows because that's what the client asks for, but we can make slight adjustments, but we need to remember that we have to make the adjustments technically to each brow so that we remain in that symmetrical state. I also like to remind my clients that your brows are sisters, not twins. I know we've all heard this before. It's totally cliche. I know I made a little meme about it a long time ago that it was like, brows are Kylie and Kendall, not Mary Kate and Ashley. So funny, right? But it's true. They're sisters, not twins. Our faces are not exact replica, mirror images of each other. One side is always a little bit flatter than the other, so our brows are not perfectly symmetrical. Of course, our goal as brow artists are to create as much symmetry as we possibly can, but I always like to remind my clients that the brows shouldn't be exactly perfect. It actually looks kind of strange if they are exactly perfect. So as symmetrical as possible without being perfectly symmetrical. What tools do you need to best map out your client's brows? So like I said before, I like to stick with the basics, simplify the process, use quality tools. There are tons of other tools out there that you can use, but I like to simplify it, so we got 4 tools. One is pre-inked mapping string. So you're going to see me map out a client's brows using the string method a little later in this video. So mapping string is a must. Little throwback story. When I first started in the industry almost 6 years ago, pre-inked mapping string didn't exist, but the string theory method did exist. So we used to take actual string, like thread that you would use to sew clothing, and I would cover it in pigment or in marker and use that to get my outlines on my client's brows. Trust me, it was really messy, so pre-inked mapping string is a game changer. Well, number 2 is a measuring caliper. So this is a slide measuring caliper that you will use to double check your measurements, double check your symmetry, double check your outlines to make sure that one brow is symmetrical to the other in length and thickness. Another side note story, my dad always says, measure twice, cut once. Being real, I think this was in reference to him building a deck back in the day, but honestly, it's so relevant to microblading. Measure your outlines, measure your mapping twice, 3 times, 4 times before you make that first cut in your client's skin, before you make that first stroke. Make sure your mapping is right. Well, number 3 is BrowTab's Easy Glide Brow Pencil. This is a black wax pencil, but trust me, not all wax pencils are made the same. This one is amazing. If you don't know about the BrowTab Easy Glide pencil, I have a YouTube video all about it, all about the qualities of it, why it's so great, and how to sharpen it best to get it super pointy, either in a line or in a point, so that you can create the crispest mapping strokes. So if you haven't watched that yet, go watch that first and then come back and finish this video, because this pencil is a game changer. I know I said game changer before, but it's a game changer, and you're going to use it to create this mapping, this outline for your client's brows, and you are going to want it to be as sharp as possible to get those crispest outlines. You're going to use this brow pencil to go over the lines that you created with your pre-inked mapping string to actually create the outlines that you're showing to your clients so that they can really envision their brows. You can also use this pencil to actually draw in strokes for your clients to better envision what their brows are going to look like. Final tool number 4 is a disposable brow razor. So you're just going to use this to clean up any excess brow hair that is outside of your outline. So any hair that your client has growing that's outside of their outline, so that when you show them the outline, they don't get any confusion as to be like, well, what's this hair down here? Or are you including this? We want to take it off. It is important to ask your clients if you can remove this brow hair before you remove it. I would say 99.9% of the time they're going to be okay with it, but it's always important to double check. So you know the importance of mapping, you know what tools we're going to be using. So let's check out this mapping video. I mapped out a client's brows using the string mapping method. We're going to see me clean up any unwanted hair. You're going to see me double checking with a caliper the measurements, and you're going to see me finishing off the outline using the BrowTab Easy Glide pencil. Check it out. you've seen how string mapping is done. So let's review the 5 keys to string mapping. Number 1, using the right tools. So like we said, the mapping can be one of the most important, if not the most important part of a microblading procedure. This is not where you want to cheap out on your tools. Really, you shouldn't be cheaping out on your tools throughout the whole service, but you don't want to cheap out on them here. Use quality basics to get you through this mapping procedure. It's just going to give you cleaner, crisper outlines, and it's going to make it easier on yourself as well. Key number 2, take your time. With practice, with time, with experience, you are going to get faster with this. I promise it will come. But when you are starting out, either if you're new to mapping in general or you're new to this method, take your time, be patient with yourself, and pay attention to the details. I promise in the end it will pay off. Number 3, have your clients sit up at least once during the mapping process. Especially older clients. Our faces change when we are lying down to when we are sitting up, thanks to gravity. So we want to have our clients sit up so that we can double check the symmetry with their faces upright, because most of the time when they're walking around the world, the faces are going to be upright. So what you're going to be checking when they actually sit up is your horizontal symmetry. So the base of the front of the brows, the tops of the front of the brows, the tops of their arches, the bottoms of their arches, and the bottoms of their tails. Number 5, make sure your outlines are crisp. I made a whole video on how to make the crispest outlines using your BrowTab Easy Glide pencil. If you haven't watched it, like I said, go check it out and then come back and finish this video. But you want to make sure your outlines are crisp. You don't want them to be too thick. That is hard for you to see what you're doing once you actually start microblading, and it's hard for your client to envision. But you also want them to be really crisp because you want them to match each other. You don't want one side to have a bit of a thicker outline than the other, because then they won't be symmetrical once you start microblading. You've seen how it's done. You know why it's important. You know what tools to use. And I feel like you guys should be ready to go try out the string mapping method on your next client. But as promised, I have a special bonus for you guys. So I have some common mistakes that I'm sure you've all made. I have definitely made all of these mistakes and some easy fixes for them. So let's go on. Common mistake number 1. This is going back to one of your keys to great mapping. Not getting super crisp outlines. So I feel like I have talked about this so much, but this is so crucial. Other than making sure that your mapping is symmetrical and your measurements are right, crisp outlines make or break your map. Once you get started on your actual microblading, you want the crispest outline so you see exactly where to start your stroke and where to end your stroke. So an easy fix is to make sure you take your time when you are finishing the outline with your pencil. Make sure your pencil is super sharp. Go watch the video on how to sharpen your pencil, but also just use a micro swab to clean up the lines to make sure that they look really fine, really crisp, and have a lot of color in there so you can see exactly where you put your strokes once you get started. Mistake number 2 is not using enough string. So you didn't take enough string out of the box, you don't have enough string to work with. Simple fix, throw out that piece and get a new piece. You don't want to skimp out. We said we don't want to skimp out on the tool. So make sure you have enough of your tool so that you can map your client's brow properly. Mistake number 3, not having your client sit up during mapping. So I said this is one of the keys, and this is a step that a lot of people can skip over. You got your client lying down, you map them out, they look great. You want to keep going. You don't want to have to ask them to sit up. Trust me, I've done this, especially with older clients, because sometimes you feel bad. You're like, lie down, sit up, lie down, sit up. It is so worth it. And like I said, especially for those older clients, because thanks to gravity, our faces change. I know I just said this, but you're going to want to make sure you sit them up at least once to double check. And the last common mistake is not taking your client's wants into account when you're creating your outline, when you're mapping. So just because the measurements say one thing, say that this is what their face can hold, it doesn't mean that that's necessarily what they want. Just because fluffy brows are in doesn't mean your 40-something-year-old client wants to rock those, even though she'd probably look amazing with them. But we want to take their wants into account. The measurements are technically guidelines. We can make adjustments based on their personal preferences, so take that into account, but make sure it is within reason. If you're getting to a situation where a client wants something a little crazy or something you're just not comfortable doing, this is the time to maybe tell this client that you are not the right brow artist for them. Cutting off the service at this point is going to save you so much headache in the future of you giving them brows that they didn't want, or you doing a set of brows that you weren't comfortable doing in the first place. So that's all, y'all. String mapping at its finest. Take what you learned today, try it out on your next client, use the string mapping theory, get yourself some pre-inked mapping string and go try it out. Just remember, if you're new to mapping in general or you're new to this method, give yourself some grace, be patient with yourself, take your time, and double check your measurements. If you all enjoyed this video and my tips, if you did, leave me a thumbs up, please. And if you want to see more microblading tips and tricks, how to brow business education, subscribe now.